talk about weekly mileage. This is Jason Fitzgerald with Strength Running, and a lot of runners want to know, what is a normal mileage level? How much mileage do other runners run? Is what I'm doing too low, too high? Where do I fall in the grand scheme of things? So I want to give you guys kind of a sneak peek into normal mileage levels at multiple different levels of runner. And you can kind of see where you fall, and you can see that if you want to become more competitive, one of the best things you can do is to simply run higher mileage, even if it's all at an easy effort. So let's start with where a lot of runners begin their career in running, and that's with high school cross country and track and field. These are runners who are 13, 14 to 18 years old, and a lot of runners at these levels are training anywhere from between 25 all the way up to 80 miles per week. I would say a normal high school mileage level for a distance runner competing in high school cross country or track and field is probably around 30 to 40 miles a week. You're going to have some really competitive programs and some really talented athletes who might be running 50, 60 miles a week. And then you might have the best runners in the country, some of the top programs having their top runners run somewhere between 70 and 80 miles a week. That was a little bit more rare when I was in high school about 20 years ago, but it's becoming increasingly common as the sport matures and as it becomes more competitive. These runners understand that they have to work harder to win conference championships and regional championships, so they're running a lot more. But typically a high school runner will probably be training anywhere from between 25 and about 60 or 70 miles a week, maybe a little bit more if they're overachievers. Now, if we look at the college level, that's where mileage levels really start to go up. And there is a bit of a difference between Division I and Division III. Division I is pretty much all very competitive athletes. Division III, you might have half the team being very competitive, and then you have a much bigger roster of less competitive athletes, but it's more inclusive. So the teams are a lot bigger, and they allow more people to participate. I trained and competed for a Division III school, and it was a great experience because I wasn't able to prioritize my sports over my academics. I had to prioritize both. And in hindsight, I think that is a great environment to be in when you're in college. But college athletes are not going to be running 30, 40 miles a week. I don't think any distance coach is going to have their athletes run that little because there's very little opportunity to get a lot better with those kinds of mileage levels. So you probably are going to see Division III runners training anywhere from between 50 miles at the very, very low end all the way up to maybe 110 or even 120 miles a week. Those are the mileage monsters. Those are the guys running incredible amounts every week because they have the durability and they have the drive to do so. Now, in Division I, you probably aren't going to have any guys running the very low end of that mileage range. You're probably going to have most guys running between 60 to 70 at the low end, all the way up to that high end of about 110, 120 miles per week. And these athletes are competitive. They are running very fast times. I would say that the university college scene is almost like the farm team for baseball. It's where everyone gets good enough, and hopefully a small sliver of that crew goes on to become elite professional runners. So they really do start training at those pro levels somewhere in the college years. Once you do graduate from college, then I would consider you a postcollegiate runner. Now, sub-elite or very competitive runners, so if we use the marathon as an example, a sub-elite or very competitive athlete might be running somewhere between 2 hours and 20 minutes all the way up to 2 hours and 45 minutes. So they're very comfortably qualifying for Boston, but they're not yet qualifying for the Olympic trials. They're somewhere in the middle. These runners are probably running 70 miles a week at a minimum, all the way up to 120 miles a week at the very, very high end. You might actually get some guys running 130 miles a week. Again, those are the mileage monsters. They are certainly outliers, and most people are going to have problems trying to run that level of mileage. That's almost 20 miles a day. You have to break that up into a lot of double sessions, and most people simply can't do it. They don't have the energy, they don't have the drive, and they certainly don't have the durability to do so without getting injured. Then of course there's pro runners. Now pro runners are probably running the same amount as these sub-elite runners, anywhere between 70 miles a week all the way up to 120, 130 miles a week. The difference is that they're just more talented. They have genetic gifts, and that allows them to run their workouts a lot faster. It allows them to be more resilient to injury so they can run even more. Now, what I want you to really take from this video is that as you develop as a runner, as you go from high school to college to post-collegiate training, and maybe even become a pro runner, your mileage generally ticks up a level with each level that you get to. Now, if you're an adult runner, most people watching this video are adult runners. You're not going to start in high school and go through the track program and then compete again in college. You're starting as an adult with a family, you have a job. How you should think about this is thinking about your mileage in terms of annual levels, and try to run a little bit more every year. And this really gives you a long-term perspective on your training. It forces you to think long-term so that you're not cutting corners, you're not rushing your training, which usually leads to an injury. And once you are several years into your running career, then you can really start trying to run more. So spend a couple years building a base of 20, 30, 40 miles a week. Maybe in year 2 you can get up to around 50 miles a week. Once you've gotten at least 2, maybe 3 years of running experience underneath you, that's when you can start taking the next step with your weekly mileage. Think long term, of course, but try to get your weekly mileage up into the 50s, and maybe, if you can handle it, the 60s and 70s. Really great things start happening to your performances when you start training at that level. Your workload goes up, your endurance goes up, and your capabilities go up. You will certainly be very much more capable as a runner, much faster, and you'll actually find that if you can get your mileage up to a certain level and then keep it there and not have these wild swings in mileage, you're actually going to reduce your injury risk. Because most injuries happen when we're increasing our mileage, not when we're comfortably at a mileage level that we've already achieved before. So I hope this video gave you some new things to think about when it comes to your mileage. And if you find yourself running 20 to 30 miles a week, know that that's a fairly beginner level. And I'd certainly encourage you to try to run more, because you're going to be a much better runner for it. So try to run more days per week. Keep all of this extra mileage that you're adding onto your program at an easy level. And let me know how you do after a couple months. I would be very curious to see what happens if you add some substantial mileage to your training and then run a bunch of races. This is like a 6-month project, so I'm not expecting you to write me immediately, but I'd love to know, how has more mileage impacted your performances?